Starward horizons. In the centuries since we first broke Earth's gravity, we learned a simple truth. The universe does not give up its secrets willingly. We built faster engines, smarter machines, stronger hulls. We pushed outward into the darkness until the night sky became a map of human lights. But the deeper we go, the more we find signs we cannot explain. Structures too old to measure, signals with no source, worlds that look arranged. Somewhere beyond the charted lanes, a pattern is emerging, one that suggests we are not the first to reach for the stars, and whatever came before us may not be gone. This is the starship Argo. This is Captain Raphael A. Sterling. The quest for the infinite begins here. The third door. The route didn't look like a route. It looked like three faint ideas drawn across the dark, three arcs of pale light that never fully became lines, as if the universe itself refused to commit to a single path. They drifted ahead of the Argo in slow, elegant curves, sometimes converging, sometimes diverging, always maintaining the suggestion of a triangle that refused to close. On the bridge, Cale's hands moved with careful impatience over his console, trying to turn beauty into data. "It's not a corridor," he said, half to himself. "It's a constraint." Calder leaned in, eyes narrowing. "Constraint on what?" "On choice," Cale said, and then looked up at Sterling as if he couldn't believe the words were coming out of his own mouth. "Captain, the archive didn't give us a destination. It gave us a decision tree, and the only stable branches are 3 valued. Cade's posture tightened. "Meaning?" "Meaning if we behave like everything is binary," Cale said, "we won't be able to follow it." Sterling stared at the arcs on the main display. The engine glow reflected faintly off the bridge viewport, like warm breath against cold glass. He could still feel the mirror archive in his bones, its polished offers, its counterfeit mercies. "Is it safe?" he asked. Mara stood near the science station, still as a sculpture that had learned to breathe. The violet flecks under her skin pulsed faintly, slow and thoughtful. "No," she said, "but it is honest." Cade gave her a look. "That's not reassuring." Mara's head tilted a fraction. "It is more reassuring than kindness." Sterling's mouth tightened. "Cale, what are our options?" Cale took a breath, as if bracing his own mind against the simplicity it craved. "We can ignore the arcs and proceed on conventional heading, or we can attempt to enter the route by matching its logic. Triadic signaling, tri-phase field behavior, tri-valued navigation." Tanaka's voice came through from engineering. "Captain, before anyone decides to tri-phase my ship, what does that do to my systems?" Cale hesitated. Unknown. Tanaka's reply was immediate. "That's my least favorite word." Petrov's channel opened, calm but tight. "After episode 12, I want to remind everyone that unknown includes cognitive effects. We just survived a forced restore attempt. If this node rewards paradox, it might eat people who think too simply." Cade finished, blunt as ever. Petrov exhaled. "Yes." Calder looked at Sterling. "Captain, you said we'd set course. We have. But if the cost is crew coherence?" Sterling didn't answer immediately. He watched the arcs shift, and in their motion he saw something unsettling. The route wasn't static. It responded to them the way a hallway responded to a person walking, subtly adjusting the space of possibilities so the walker could continue. It wanted to be followed, not like a trap, like a test. "We'll proceed," Sterling said quietly. "But we proceed like we're stepping onto thin ice. Mara, tell me what you know." Mara's violet flecks brightened, then dimmed, like a thought changing shape. The network has places where it collects answers, she said, and places where it builds them. The mirror archive is collection. This is construction. It is where the root teaches you how to stop being predictable. Hell's eyes widened. So, it's a training node. Cade's jaw flexed. Training for what? Mara looked at Sterling. For the hub. Silence held the bridge for a beat. Everyone had felt the hub in the story the artifacts were telling, an implied center, a place where roots converged and identities were weighed, shelved, corrected. Sterling nodded once, as if acknowledging an approaching storm. Then we learn, he said. Helm, bring us to the first arc at minimum impulse. Tanaka, prep the polyname sheath for modulation. Kale, build me a triadic handshake. Petrov, stand by with protocol for dissociation. Petrov's voice was clipped. Already written. Cade's voice was colder. And I'll be standing by with protocol for panic. Calder let out a breath that was almost a laugh. That's just you existing, Commander. Cade didn't smile, but she didn't deny it. The Argo drifted toward the first arc, and the universe somehow leaned closer. Act SV3 valued space. At the moment the Argo's bow crossed the pale curve, the ship did not lurch or shudder. There was no pressure like the soft boundary, no mirror sheen like the archive. Instead, the nav display showed 3 headings at once. Not 3 possible headings. 3 active ones. The Argo remained in one place visually, but the numbers on the helm refused to collapse into a single solution. Velocity flickered between 3 coherent values, each stable, each mutually exclusive. Calder's voice sharpened. Helm, report. The helmsman swallowed. Sir, I'm holding course, but the system says we're also 2 degrees starboard and 1 degree port. Tanaka's voice came in, alarm rising. Captain, I'm seeing phase splitting in the inertial dampers. Not failure. Multiplex, like the ship is carrying 3 inertial profiles simultaneously. Cal's fingers flew. It's tri-stating us, he breathed. Captain, the root is forcing our systems into ternary logic. Not yes, no, and. Kaz's eyes narrowed. And! Cal looked up, almost fierce with excitement despite the fear. The ship can inhabit contradictory micro-decisions without tearing, if we can control it. Petrov's voice cut in. Control it how? Cal hesitated, then spoke carefully. By refusing to resolve too early, by holding 3 truths long enough for the root to accept them. Mara's voice was quiet, but it landed hard. If you insist on one answer, it will provide one. If you allow 3, it will carry you. Sterling's hands tightened on the chair's arms. He felt the ship's vibration under his bones, a subtle chord where there had been a single note. It wasn't painful. It was unsettling in the way a familiar song became harmonized by a singer you didn't trust. Kale, Sterling said. Triadic handshake, now. Kale keyed the transmitter. Sending. On the main display, a small diagnostic window opened. No readable text for anyone but Kale, but the crew could see the concept. The ship's signal, instead of a single modulated carrier, split into 3 interleaved phase patterns. It looked like braided light. The first response did not come as sound or words. It came as the root itself shifting. The arcs ahead brightened and rearranged, forming a triangle that almost closed, then deliberately left a gap. A missing side. A door not yet drawn. Captain, Kel whispered. It accepted. Cade's voice was low. Accepted what? Mara answered. That you're not insisting. Sterling stared at the gap in the triangle, a door implied by absence, a passage formed by what wasn't there. He didn't like it. He didn't like how much it made sense. Proceed, Sterling said. The Argo advanced, and the route advanced with her. They traveled for hours without crossing distance in any way Sterling could explain to a person who believed in maps. Stars slipped past, but not like motion, like context changing. Constellations reconfigured without the ship seeming to move, as if the route was selecting which universe-adjacent slice of space they were allowed to occupy. Cale was in heaven and terror at once. "It's not faster than light," he said, voice hoarse. "It's faster than decision. We're not traveling through space. We're traveling through options." Tanaka's voice came in, tight. "Captain, I need to warn you. This is putting load on the sheath. The ship is maintaining controlled variance and triphase multiplexer simultaneously. If anything spikes, if we get a shock, systems could try to collapse into a single state. That could be catastrophic." Sterling nodded. "Understood." Petrov's channel opened again, softer. "Captain, crew wellness update. Minor dissociation episodes, headaches, a few reports of déjà vu, and I was about to say something different. Nothing severe yet." Sterling's jaw tightened. "Keep monitoring." Petrov hesitated. "Captain, you!" Sterling's eyes flicked to the forward display, to the route that looked like gentle light and behaved like a question. "I'm fine," he said. Petrov's silence told him she didn't believe him. And worse, she didn't think lying helped. Before she could push, Cale made a sound. "Contact," he said. Ahead. The arcs of the route pulled inward, tightening into a triangular loop that almost formed a symbol, 3 curves meeting, leaving a small open space at the center. And in that open space, something waited. At first, it looked like a dark speck. Then the speck became an object. 3 immense arches made of a material that didn't reflect light so much as edit it. The arches intersected without touching, forming a 3-sided structure that suggested a doorway, but no physical door existed. Between the arches, space looked subtly wrong. Not distorted like gravity. Not smeared like the soft boundary. Just undecided. Like a pixel that couldn't choose a color. Cade's voice went very still. "That's the node." Mara's violet flecks brightened. "The 3rd door," she said. Sterling stared at it. "We're calling it that?" Mara didn't look away. "It is what it calls itself." Cal swallowed. "Captain, I'm detecting a field. Tri-phase resonance. It's inviting us to approach." Cade snapped. "Everything invites. That's what they do." Sterling held up a hand. "All right. Slow approach. Shields on standby, not raised." Tanaka's voice came sharp. "Captain, I'd feel better with shields." "We raise shields. We declare a single answer," Cale said quickly. "We declare threat. This node might reject that." Cade's eyes flashed. "Or it might punish stupidity." Sterling exhaled. "We proceed carefully." The Argo drifted toward the arches, and for the first time since entering the route, Sterling felt something like a presence, not pressing into his mind like the archive, not smoothing like the null chapel. This presence felt like a mathematician watching someone solve a problem. Patient, unforgiving, curious. Act 2. The Binary Predator. The warning came too late. Not from sensors. Cale had no data spike to interpret. From Mara, her violet flecks flared, and she turned sharply to Sterling. "Captain, something is following." Cade's hand went to her sidearm out of sheer reflex, then froze when she remembered physics didn't care about her weapons. Cale's fingers flew. "Sigtinning. Captain, I'm not seeing." The main display shifted. A shape emerged behind them. Not from darkness, but from the route itself collapsing into a line. It was long and narrow, like a blade drawn across the starfield. It moved with a brutal clarity that made Sterling's skin crawl. Where the triadic route shimmered with gentle ambiguity, this thing was exact. Binary. A correction entity. It didn't look like a ship. It looked like a decision. Either or, forced into motion. "Captain," Cale whispered, voice thin. It's simplifying the route behind us." The arcs they'd traveled dimmed and straightened, becoming a single harsh line. Tanaka's voice snapped in. "Captain, my systems just attempted to resolve. Something is pushing the ship toward a single inertial profile." Petrov's channel opened, urgent. "Crew reports sudden nausea, vertigo. Their brains are trying to choose, and it hurts." Cade's voice was a growl. "So, we have a predator that eats ambiguity." Mara's gaze remained locked on the blade shape. "It is not a predator," she said. "It is an answer that hates questions." Sterling's mind raced. The third door ahead, a pursuer behind, the ship caught between triadic space and binary enforcement. "Can we outrun it?" Sterling demanded. Cale shook his head. "It's not moving through space. It's moving through resolution. It wins by making the universe simpler." Cade snapped. "Then we stop being simple." Tanaka's voice came tight. "Captain, I can increase variance, but the sheath is already strained. If we push too hard, we risk a split like in the shuttle. On the whole ship." Sterling's mouth went dry. He thought of the shuttle paradox split. The way Cale had lost a piece of his name cleanly. He could not afford that on the Argo. But he also couldn't afford the binary blade catching them and filing them into one solvable state. Mara spoke, low and clear. "The third door does not allow binary inside. Bring it here." Sterling stared at the arches ahead, the undecided space between them. "You're saying we lure it into the node?" Mara nodded. "It will be forced to become something else. Or it will break." Cade's eyes narrowed. "Or we break." Sterling's hands tightened. He felt the captain's familiar calculus settle into his bones. Risk, cost, intention. "Do it," he said. "Helm, full impulse toward the third door. Cale, keep triadic handshake active. Tanaka, stabilize the sheath, but prepare for surge. Cade, Petrov, brace the crew." Calder's voice came in from the bridge systems, tense. "Captain, you want me to?" Sterling cut him off. "Calder, prepare emergency separation protocols. If we lose the ship to forced resolution, you cut loose compartments to preserve life." A beat of silence. "Aye, Captain," Calder said quietly. The Argo surged forward. Behind them, the binary blade accelerated, not by changing speed, but by reducing the distance of meaning between itself and them. The route behind narrowed into a single line, like a noose drawn tight. Crew voices crackled briefly over internal comms. Confusion, nausea, someone laughing in a way that sounded like crying. Petrov's voice was steady in the storm. "Breathe! Name yourself! Name your role! Anchor to each other." Sterling gripped the armrests and did the same silently. Raphael A. Sterling, Captain, present. The arches of the third door grew in the viewport, looming like a monument built by a mind that didn't believe in straight lines. Cale's hands shook as he worked. "Captain, the node is activating. It's reading us." Cade snapped. "Then let it read fast." Mara's eyes were wide, violet flecks blazing. "It is not reading," she said. "It is asking." Sterling swallowed. "What question?" Mara's voice dropped. "Are you willing to be more than one answer at once?" The ship's lights flickered, not from failure, but from tri-phase harmonics intensifying. The forward display showed the space between the arches becoming more defined, like a doorway resolving out of indecision. The binary blade behind them hit the outer field of the node, and the universe made a sound, not audible, A conceptual snap, like an equation rejecting a solution. The blade shape shuddered. Its clean line fuzzed at the edges. For the first time, it reflected the starfield imperfectly. Cal gasped. It's losing coherence. Cade's voice was fierce. Good. But the blade did not die. It adapted. Its line split once into two. The binary answer became two conflicting binaries, both trying to dominate. Tanaka's voice went sharp with alarm. Captain, the ship's systems are spiking. The presence is pushing us to resolve between two threats, two headings, two doors, Sterling realized. He stared at the third door and saw it. The space between the arches wasn't one opening. It was three. Three overlapping possibilities that looked like one until your eyes stopped insisting on a single focus. Three doors, superimposed. The node was not a doorway. It was a choice. And behind them, the blade was forcing the ship into a binary framing. Left or right, fight or flee, accept or refuse, anything to keep them from seeing the third. Mara's voice was strained. Do not choose between two. That is how it enters you. Sterling's mouth went dry. Then what do we do? Cale's eyes flicked to Sterling, then to Mara, then to the doors. His voice was shaking. We take the third. Cade barked a humorless laugh. And how do we identify it under pressure? Mara answered, voice like a knife-cutting silk. You stop letting fear name your options. Sterling felt the truth of that land-like impact. Fear framed the world in binaries because binaries were fast. Survive or die, win or lose, comfort or pain. The archive had offered comfort as a trap. The null chapel had offered quiet as a cost. The soft boundary had offered smoothing as mercy. Now the third door offered a third option, but only if they refused the panic that demanded a simple answer. Sterling exhaled. Tanaka, he said, voice steady. Bring up the 5 anchors from Episode 11. Explorer, refuge, weapon, question, promise. Put them into rotation. Slow, not to hide. To widen. Tanaka's channel clicked open. Her voice was tight, but there was something like relief in it. An engineer given a real task instead of a prayer. Aye, Captain, she said, initiating braid. The ship's field shifted. Not wildly. Not like the forced split in the shuttle. Deliberate, gentle. 5 strands of identity woven around the hull like aurora filaments. Sterling felt his mind widen. Not fracture, but expand. Like breathing deeper than he'd allowed himself in weeks. The nausea in his stomach eased a fraction. Petrov's voice came through. Crew symptoms stabilizing. They're less desperate to choose. Cade's eyes narrowed at the display. I can see it, she said, almost unwilling. The third door. Sterling looked and saw it too. A subtle opening between the other two, defined not by brightness, but by coherence. The left and right options shimmered with urgency. The third looked quiet, not safe, not easy, just not framed by fear. Sterling's voice was calm. Helm, take the third. The helmsman swallowed. Aye, Captain. The Argo shifted its trajectory. Not left, not right, but into a sliver that had not existed until they stopped insisting on 2. The binary blade behind them surged forward, splitting and splitting again, trying to reimpose an either-or. It hit the node's triadic field fully, and the third door replied. The mirrored arches flared with pale violet and icy blue light. The space between them became a lattice of 3 interlocking waves. The blade shape's clean line broke into jagged fragments. Not debris, not explosions, just unresolved pieces. For a moment, the binary answer tried to remain an answer. Then it became a question. Its fragments stopped moving with certainty. They drifted like confused needles in a magnetic field that had stopped telling them where north was. Kale exhaled, shaking. It's neutralized. Mara's voice was quiet. It is being taught. Cade stared. Taught what? Mara didn't look away from the drifting fragments. That there are more than two ways to exist. Sterling's eyes remained on the third door. The opening ahead widened, not physically, but conceptually. The root arcs converged into the triadic lattice, guiding them forward. The ship slid through, and the stars changed again. Act 3. The Chamber of Unasked Questions. Inside the third door, there was no corridor. There was a place, not a structure with walls and ceilings, but a region where the universe felt designed, like an idea built into space-time. 3 immense platforms floated in a triangular arrangement, connected by bridges of faint, shimmering lattice. Above them hung 3 rings, each rotating at a different speed, each emitting a different harmonic glow, amber, blue, violet, that overlapped to form a shifting white where they intersected. In the center of the triangle hovered a dark sphere the size of a shuttlecraft, matte and perfect. It swallowed light, not by absorbing it, but by refusing to participate in reflection. Around it, faint symbols flickered, geometries, not letters. "Captain," Kale whispered. "This is not like the others." Sterling stared at the rings. He felt his breath slow. The place didn't push into his mind. It didn't offer comfort. It didn't try to smooth. It waited, patient as a question that didn't need an answer to exist. Mara stepped forward, as if she knew where the center of the room was, despite there being no floor beneath her feet. Her violet flecks dimmed to a steady glow. "This is not a node that collects," she said. "It is a node that changes." Cade's voice was low. "Changes what?" Mara turned slightly toward Sterling. "It changes the way you ask." Sterling frowned. "We're on the ship. We're not going out there unless we have to." Kale hesitated. "Captain, the field is stable. It's not demanding an away team." Petrov's channel opened. "Thank you," Kale added. "But it is inviting interaction." Cade muttered. "Everything invites." Sterling watched the central sphere. Something about it reminded him of the Null Chapel's ring, an object that was less a machine than a conversation. He remembered the cost he'd paid there and the counterfeit the archive had offered him. He was done paying blindly. "Kale," Sterling said, "what can we do from here?" Kale's fingers moved. "We can send a probe signal, triadic coded. Ask for a map, a warning, a tool." Mara's voice cut in. "Do not ask for a tool." Kale froze. "Why?" Mara's gaze stayed on the sphere. "If you ask for a tool, you will become a problem that requires a tool. If you ask for a map, you will become a traveler that needs a map. If you ask for a warning, you will become a threat to be warned." Cade stared at her. "That's insane." Mara's tone didn't change. "It is precise." Sterling felt a slow chill. "Then what do we ask?" Mara's violet flecks pulsed. "Ask what you refuse to ask. That is why this exists." Kale swallowed. "Captain, I have an idea." Sterling looked at him. "Say it." Kale's voice was hesitant, raw. "We keep framing the network as something doing things to us. The archive offering, the chapel taking, the boundary smoothing. But what if this is also about what it's trying to do with us?" Cade's eyes narrowed. "Like partnership. Like recruitment," Petrov said sharply. Kale nodded, uncomfortable. "Yes." Sterling's jaw tightened. "So we ask what it wants?" Cade's voice was immediate. "No, we don't volunteer our throats." Mara's voice softened. "Not kind, but honest. It already knows your throat exists." Sterling stared at the central sphere. The rings above rotated, their overlapping glow forming shifting patterns. Triangles becoming circles, becoming lines. Never settling, he made his decision. "Kale," Sterling said. "Send the signal. One question." Kale's hands hovered. "What question, Captain?" Sterling's throat tightened around the words. He knew suddenly why Mara had said to ask what you refused to ask. Because the refused questions were the ones that owned you. He spoke anyway. "What are you building?" Sterling said, voice low. "That requires us to stop being solvable." Kale stared at him, then nodded once. "Sending." The triadic handshake pulsed. The chamber did not reply with a voice. The central sphere darkened further, as if focusing. The rings above it slowed, aligning into a single moment where their overlap formed a perfect, bright triangle. Then, the triangle broke, not into two halves, but into three unequal pieces. Sterling felt something shift in the ship, not systems, not gravity, meaning. The question they had asked was being answered in a language made of consequences. On the main display, the sensor feed reorganized itself into three simultaneous streams, three interpretations of the same data, each coherent, each contradicting the others in small, precise ways. Kale's eyes went wide. "Captain, it's giving us three answers." Cade's voice was sharp. "And what's the trick?" "Which is real?" Mara's voice was quiet. "All." Petrov's channel opened, wary. "Kale, summarize." Kale swallowed and began, voice shaking with the effort of holding three truths. "Answer one," he said. "The network is building a route to a convergence point. The hub, because it expects an external event. Something that collapses systems. It's preparing a way for information to survive." Sterling's brow furrowed. "An extinction." Kale nodded. "Possibly." He continued, breath quickening. "Answer 2. The network is building a way to change minds. Teach them to carry paradox, because binary minds break under the hub's conditions. It's a cognitive adaptation pathway." Petrov's voice went cold. "A forced evolution," Kale hesitated. "Or a taught one." Cade's tone was a growl. "And answer 3? Kale's voice dropped. "Answer 3. The network is building a lock, a prison. The hub is not a shelter. It's a containment system. It needs beings who can hold contradictions, because only contradictions can seal what it holds." Silence slammed onto the bridge. Sterling felt his pulse slow, heavy. "A prison," he repeated. Mara's violet flecks dimmed. "Yes." Cade's voice was low. "What does it hold?" The chamber didn't answer that. Instead, the rings above the sphere rotated again, and the display showed a new pattern. A root line, triadic, leading onward, but with a note of absence, a gap like the one they'd seen before. A missing side in the triangle. Another door not yet drawn. Kale's voice was a whisper. "It's saying, the hub is ahead, and we are not ready." Petrov's voice came in, controlled. "And it's offering to make us ready." Mara's gaze stayed on the sphere. "It will not offer comfort," she said. "It will offer capacity." Sterling's jaw tightened. "What's the cost?" Mara didn't look away. "The cost is that you will never again be able to pretend there are only two options." Cade barked a short laugh. "That's not a cost. That's called growing up," Petrov replied. Sharp. "It is absolutely a cost. People rely on simplicity. It's how they survive grief." Sterling felt that land in the empty place where his stolen memory lived. Simplicity would have been a mercy. It would also have been a cage. He looked at Kale. "What's it offering, specifically?" Kale's fingers moved through the tri-stream data, and his face tightened as he found the pattern. "It's offering a protocol," he said. "A ship-level adaptation. a navigation and shielding layer that operates in ternary logic. It would let us refuse resolution under hub conditions. It would let us carry 3 states without splitting apart. Tanaka's voice came in instantly. Captain, that's huge. That's a redesign of how the ship handles control loops. I can implement, but it's risky. Cade's voice was firm. Risky is better than being filed. Petrov's voice was tight. Risky is also how people die. Sterling stared at the chamber. It waited. It did not push. It did not plead. It simply offered a capacity and let them decide. Sterling exhaled. Tanaka, he said, can you sandbox it? Implement on one subsystem first. Tanaka's voice softened a fraction. Yes, we can start with navigation stabilization. If it goes wrong, we revert. Kale flinched. Captain, revert is the wrong word here. Sterling's mouth tightened. Then we recover to baseline, without calling the archive. Kale nodded. Aye. Mara's violet flecks brightened, as if approval had a color. Sterling looked at Petrov. Medical risk. Petrov hesitated. If the ship can hold ternary stability, it may reduce cognitive stress under these fields. But learning to think 3-valued, that's not a software patch. It will change how people argue, how they grieve, how they make peace. Cade's eyes stayed hard. Good? Petrov snapped. Not good, just necessary. Sterling nodded. Then we do it carefully. He looked at Mara. You said this place changes the way we ask? Mara's voice was quiet. It changes the way you live with the answers. Sterling's gaze returned to the triadic rings. Tanaka, he said, begin integration of the ternary navigation layer. Kala, work with her. Cade, keep security alert, but no aggressive posture. Petrov, crew protocols. Calder, hold us steady. Calder's voice came through. Steady. Aye, Captain. The third door did not glow brighter. It did not celebrate. It simply opened the route ahead a fraction wider, like a teacher who saw a student finally stop asking for the easy problem. Act 4. The price of a third answer. Integration took 6 hours. 6 hours of Tanaka arguing with physics. Kale arguing with his own need for certainty. Calder managing a bridge crew whose instruments refused to settle. Petrov walking the corridors and teaching people to name themselves without forcing their feelings into tidy bins. Sterling stayed on the bridge, not because he needed to micromanage, because he didn't trust himself alone. The third door's chamber remained on the forward display like an eye that didn't blink. The rings rotated, steady, patient. At hour 3, Sterling felt it, subtle as a hand on his shoulder. Not a voice, a temptation. Not comfort like the archive, not quiet like the chapel. Something else, the seduction of being right. He realized with a jolt that binary thinking didn't only offer comfort. It offered superiority. The clean pleasure of declaring yes or no, good or bad, enemy or friend. The third door would take that from him, and part of him hated it. Petrov found him staring. She didn't speak at first. She just stood beside his chair, looking at the display. Finally, she said, "You're quiet." Sterling's mouth tightened. "I'm thinking." Petrov's eyes narrowed. That's what people say when they're holding something alone. Sterling almost smiled. Almost. "I miss certainty," he admitted, and the words felt like a wound exposed to air. Petrov nodded slowly. "So do I." Sterling's gaze stayed on the rings. The archive offered certainty wrapped as comfort. The chapel offered certainty wrapped as calm. This place offers uncertainty as strength. Petrov's voice softened. Strength still costs. Sterling nodded. I know. He hesitated, then said what he hadn't said aloud since the Null Chapel. I still can't remember it, he said quietly. The rain, the stone. Petrov's gaze stayed on him. I know. And in the archive, Sterling continued, voice low. I almost took it back. Petrov didn't flinch. I know. Sterling swallowed. I hated myself for wanting it. Petrov's voice was firm. Wanting it isn't a crime. Accepting it would have been surrender. You didn't surrender. Sterling let out a breath that shook. I'm tired of being tested. Petrov's eyes softened, but her voice didn't lie. Then stop walking into Precursor's temples. Sterling actually laughed, quiet and rough. Noted. Petrov leaned closer, voice lower. Captain, this third answer thing, it can't become another way you punish yourself. Don't turn complexity into martyrdom. Sterling's laughter died. He nodded once. Understood. Petrov's gaze drifted to the display. You know what scares me? Sterling looked at her. Tell me. That the hub needs us capable of contradiction to seal something, Petrov said. That means the thing inside the hub is worse than us, worse than the network, worse than the archive's kindness. Sterling's jaw tightened. Yes. Petrov's voice was quiet, and that means the network might not be our enemy. Cade's voice cut in from behind them, sharp. Or it might be a jailer who thinks it's a savior. Sterling turned. Cade stood with arms crossed, eyes hard, listening more than speaking. Sterling nodded. Both can be true. Cade stared at him for a beat, then gave a single, curt nod, as if acknowledging a new rule of reality. At hour 6, Tanaka's voice came over comms, exhausted but triumphant. Captain, she said, ternary nav layer is live. We're stable. Not perfectly, never perfectly, but stable, Kale added, voice shaky with relief. We can hold 3 coherent solutions without splitting. The ship's control loops are learning to hesitate. Cade muttered. Hesitation as a weapon. Mara's voice was quiet, almost satisfied. Hesitation as freedom. Sterling leaned forward. Test it. Kale ran the test. On the display, the Argo's projected path forked into 3 threads, then braided. The ship's field shimmered in subtle tricolor harmonics. Instruments refused to settle into one value, but they did not spike or collapse. They held. Sterling felt something in his chest loosen. A fraction. Good, he said. Now we leave. Kale blinked. Captain, leave? We just... Sterling cut him off gently. We got what we came for. We don't linger in classrooms after the lesson. Mara's violet flecks dimmed. Wise, she said. The third door's rings rotated faster for a moment, and the route ahead brightened. It was not approval. It was acceptance. The Argo turned toward the triadic arcs. Behind them, the binary fragments drifted outside the node's field. No longer a blade, no longer an answer with teeth. Sterling watched them recede. For the first time, he didn't feel like they were being hunted. He felt like they were being prepared. That was, in some ways, worse. Because preparation implied purpose, and purpose implied the hub was not optional. Calder's voice came through, steady, course plotted, holding triadic route. Sterling nodded once. Take us out, he said. The Argo slid forward. The stars shifted, context rearranging. The route selecting futures like a careful hand choosing pages in a book. Petrov's voice came in, low. Captain, one more thing. Sterling glanced toward her. Go ahead. Petrov hesitated. When the chamber gave 3 answers, did you believe one more than the others? Sterling stared at the route ahead, at the faint triangular gap that implied more doors to come. He thought of the archive, offering comfort as control. The chapel, taking memory as payment. The soft boundary, trying to smooth them into peace. He thought of the third door, offering capacity and refusing to flatter them with certainty. "I believe," Sterling said quietly, "that all three are true enough to kill us if we treat them like only one is." Petrov nodded. Grim. "That's an answer." Mara's voice, soft as the edge of a knife, drifted across the bridge. "No," she said. "It is the beginning of one." Sterling faced forward. "Then we keep going," he said. And the Argo, now less solvable, less predictable, more herself in all the ways that mattered, followed the triadic route toward the hub that waited beyond the map. Thank you for listening. If you like this story, please subscribe for more.